Hey everyone. So as we progress in today's learning journey, this today's session is about analyzing the IPL data. So this is a hands-on session where we are going to make use of IPL dataset, which is currently present in the Kaggle. We'll use the dataset and perform the analysis using Python programming language. So this is what we are going to cover. So first, we are going to start with understanding the visualization, and then we are going to understand why we require visualization, and we'll see what is the benefit of visualization, and we'll also see what are the tools that we have when it comes to doing the visualization. And at the end, we are going to create the visualization using Python programming. So that's the agenda of today's session T. So first, let's start with a question. What is visualization? So visualization is nothing but creation of visual representation of the data in the format of tables and figures. The reason that we want to create the data in the form of visualization because it will help us in getting a lot of that information with just quick peek at the data. Okay, so let's see what is visualization and the important thing. So coming to visualization. So data visualization is actually an interdisciplinary field which deals with graphical representation of the data. It's particularly an efficient way of communicating when the data is numerous. For example, a time series data. So if you think about it, if you take any business, so whenever we are saving the data, we are saving the data in the format of a table. Just to give you a visualization, let's assume I'm running a website or an e-commerce website, and on my website, each and every minute an orders will be flowing in. So I'll be just saving those records, saying it as okay, from customer A this order has been placed, from customer B this order has been placed. So in this way I will be getting the information throughout the day. So all this information, I'll be storing it in the format of rows and columns. So in rows, I'll have an individual customer information, and in the columns, I'll have the respective column information, like what is the customer name, what is the payment method that he has used, what is the product that he has ordered, what is the price of that product, and what is the profit that I'm getting from that particular product. So all this information will be stored in the columns. So at the end of the day, I'll be having all the data in the format of a row and column format, which is a structured data. Now, if someone comes and asks me as, hey, how are you doing at the end of the day? So how is it better compared to your previous day? Then in such scenarios, obviously I'll have to deep dive into the table and do the mathematical calculation. I'll have to find the what is the average profit that I've got today and how many returns has happened. So I'll do all those manual activities and I'll have to spend time in order to get the information out of this data. See, so this is just the information. If I want to get inside of the data, yeah, as I mentioned, we have to do all those activities. So obviously it's a time consuming, and even when I get that result or the outcome from my analysis, so that outcome will not be much easier to present. I mean, if I'm explaining to my friend, so I'll have to explain him each and everything. But instead, if I create a plot and tell him to give an example as, okay, so this is what my profit trend is from last 7 days. So if I give him this if I give him this kind of graph, it would actually clearly say as, okay, so compared to previous days, so I can see there is an increasing trend. So there is an increase in profit for this given business. So I'm able to get more information by just creation of this visualization. Okay, now, as we have clearly seen what is visualization and why visualization is important. So let's look into some other information as why data visualization is important. So data visualization gives us the clear idea as what the information means by giving it the visual context through maps or graph. And this actually makes the data more natural for the human mind to comprehend, and therefore it makes it easier to identify the trends, patterns, and outliers within the given data set. So one more example that I can quote over here is like whenever we are watching the cricket matches. So if the cricket match team or something of the channel want to give the information as what is happening in the game, they'll just show some graphs like this. So if I take the example of cricket, so they'll say it as, okay, this is belongs to the team one, And this is the graph. This is how it has progressed in 20 over match of T20, and this is for the team 2. So this is where the team 2 is present. So by the end of, let's assume, 5 overs. So by the end of 5 overs, this is how the trend is. So here, if I have some dots which would represent the wicket fall down, which we would normally see in that TV. So let's assume this is how the team 2 is. So if I simply look into this graph, I can say that by the end of 5 over, team 2 is actually performing well. So they have scored more runs compared to my team 1. And another insight that I can clearly say over here is team 1 has lost only 1 wicket at that time by the end of 5 over, but team 2 has already lost 4 wickets. So that's the intuition and the insight that I was able to directly derive by simply looking into this figure. So that's the benefit of visualization. And this kind of graph that we'll be seeing, like almost in every game. So whenever we are watching on TV. So the main idea is like, the main idea is to generate or convey more information, and that information will be easier to convey when we represent it in the format of a figure. So because like the human mind, it's more natural when it comes to understanding the visualization. Okay, so that's the reason visualization plays an important role when it comes to analysis of data. And we also have various products for creating the visualization. We also have Tableau, Power BI also, which will enable us to create better and better visualization. And coming to Python, we have various libraries to achieve the similar activities during the coding as well. Now, once we have created this visualization, what is the benefit of this data visualization? So when it comes to benefits, so if I'm able to create the visualization, I'll be able to better understand the correlations in my given data. Correlation is one of the statistical concept which will help me to understand as what happens if a change in one variable, does it affect another variable? Okay, so an example can be something like this. Let's say I have some information. Okay, so this is the information. So this information says this, let's assume it's a mileage. Okay, this is a mileage. I have mileage along y-axis and I have displacement along x-axis, or the horsepower. Okay, now when I print the relationship, or when I create a plot uh, with horsepower and the mileage of the different cars, I'll be getting the data points that would look something like this. Now, if I observe this plot very closely here, I can clearly see that whenever there is an increase in horsepower, there is a decrease in mileage. So this measurement of relationship between two continuous variables is called as correlations. So here there is a negative correlation between two variables, that is horsepower and the mileage. Now, if I have the relationship in a different format, that means in an invert format, let me just give you an example of the visualization of the same. So if I have a different kind of visualization, say like this, then this is a positive correlation. So positive correlation means increasing in one is also going to affect in increase in another one as well. So change in one area variable, so increase in one variable is going to increase the another variable as well. In such scenarios, I'm going to say there is a positive correlation. Now here in the first example, there is a negative correlation because increasing in one variable is resulting in decreasing of another variable. So by creation of plot, I'll be able to better visualize these correlations. So how data is affected. And we can also understand about the trends over the time. So to give you an intuition as how we can actually use it. So let's assume I have the sales information of my website from past 10 years, then I can analyze the trend. So let's assume for the year of 2008, this is how my information is present. Okay, this is for the year 2008, my sales information. And similarly, I have one more plot for the year 2009. For 2009, this is how my 2009 data looks like, and for 2010 this is how my data looks like, and for 2011 this is how my data looks like, for 2012 this is how my data looks like. And I can clearly see that in this particular time frame I can see there is a spike in my ordering. So this is one of the trend that I'm able to see for this given data. So here I'm able to observe there is some kind of a seasonality is present in my given time series data. It could be represented as, okay, so this is a period of February to March where it's a new year or a Gudi Padwa or Yugadi in India. So in such time, maybe people want to buy more. So that is what my time series data is conveying to me. And we can get to know and we can understand the seasonality better if I'm creating the plot. And if I and another example can be something as understanding the trends over the time. Let's say over the period of 5 years, this is how my stocks would look like. So this is my initial price of stock, and as the time progresses, this is how it looks like. Now this clearly sees that over the period of time there is an increasing in trend. So all these analysis or all these intuitions, it is easy for us to understand when we are creating the visualization. And we can also understand the frequency. So when I say frequency, I can create something like a bar chart to understand as, okay, which is very important to me. I can examine the market by looking into the various categories and apply various group by and create the visualization. I can examine the market, and also it will help me to analyze what is the risk and the reward involved for a given particular task that I'm currently planning to do. So all these are the information that I'll be able to derive effectively whenever I'm creating the visualization. Okay. So yes, so here we have some information about correlation. So as we have seen already, correlation is a measure or degree of relationship between two variables. So as one set of value increases, the other set tends to increase, then it is called as positive correlation. As one set of values increase, the other set tends to decrease, then it is called as negative correlation. So here in this example plot that has been given to us, this clearly shows there is a negative correlation. The reason because as the one set of values is increasing, as the pressure is increasing, the wind is being decreased. Hence, I can say that there is a negative correlation for this given pair of data. Okay, and the another helpful information that we can get to know about this visualization is trends over the time. So a trend is nothing but a hip or a popular at a certain point of time. So it usually refers to a certain style in fashion or entertainment. There could be trend towards the warmer temperature, or from the time series perspective, it could be an increasing in trend or decrease in trend. Okay, and it will also help us in analyzing the frequency. So the frequency analysis is a numerical method which provides clear representation of global dynamics of many multidimensional system. So and another example can be something as like analyzing the hotspots in a given spatial data that comes under spatial analytics. And we can examine the markets. So like our market overview is a brief synopsis of commercial or industrial market. It aims to provide current snapshot of market in order to better understand the key features. And also it will help us in analyzing the risk and reward. So the risk and reward ratio makes it actually marks the prospective reward an investor can earn for every dollar they risk on an investment. So many investors use risk reward ratios to compare the expected returns of an investment with the amount of risk they undertake to earn these returns. To give you more example, so if you have been into buying the mutual fund or stocks, so or if you have seen any other websites, okay, whenever you try to purchase any stock over there or buy any mutual fund, they'll actually show you the trend. So they'll show the trend of, let's assume, 5 years of data, and they'll say, okay, this is how the stocks are varying. Now if it is a high risk stock, then you'll be able to understand, okay, so an example can be some quant or those kind of funds, which is very high risky funds. So those kind of funds, when you visualize the data or when you look into the trend, you'll see sudden jump in the stock values and sudden drop, sudden jump and sudden stock. So it will give us the perspective about, okay, what is the risk that is involved and what is the reward that is involved if I'm investing this particular stock. So it gives the investors the perspective as, okay, if I'm investing in this particular stock, what is the worst that could happen? And if I'm in the best, so what is the best that could happen? So it gives me the perspective and it helps me to analyze as whether am I ready for this kind of risk for my amount of money. Now, with that analysis, I can decide as how much percentage of my amount should go to this stock and how much percentage of amount should go to the earning, which are the good earning stocks. So that's the intuition that I'll be able to get by analyzing, by looking at the visualizations. Now, in order to create the visualization, we have various tools available in the market. So we have various tools. So we have the tools like Power BI, Click Report, Tableau, Graph Tool. We can also make use of Tensor Board. And we have some software like Zoho Analytics, Seaborn Library, Matplotlib, Bokeh. So you can clearly see these are the various visualization tools that are available to us, which will help us in represent the data. So let's proceed, team. Let's do one thing. As I mentioned, this is a hands-on session. So we'll create a notebook. We'll use this IPL dataset. We'll load the data, and then we are going to create the basic visualization. Let's come over here. Now here in my first step, I'm going to import my necessary libraries. I'm importing my pandas library, numpy library, and seaborn and matplotlib. Numpy library is to help me in working with numpy arrays, and pandas library is going to help me in loading my data as a data frame. Matplotlib and seaborn is going to help me to create the visualizations. Now, once I've imported, the next step that I'm doing over here is I'm reading my CSV file, which is present in my working directory. So this is my current working directory. In my working directory, there's a subfolder that is called as dataset. And in that dataset, in that in that folder of datasets, there is a file that's called as IPL matches. So I'm going to load this CSV file. So I've given as pd.read CSV and have mentioned where exactly my file is present. And then I've mentioned as df.head to display first few entries of my data frame. So this is the first thing that we want to do whenever we are analyzing the data. We want to get a quick look at the data to understand as how the data looks like and what are the columns do we have. So this is an IPL matches data set which is present for data between 2008 to 2020. I have some information about match ID and where exactly that match was where match was present, and we also have some information about when it was conducted, when the match takes place, and who is the player of the match, which is the venue, and whether it is a neutral venue or not. And obviously the first one is for Chinnaswamy Stadium. It's a home ground for Royal Challengers Bangalore. Hence, in this scenario, it's mentioned as 0 because it's not a neutral ground. It's a home ground for Royal Challengers Bangalore. And the team 2 is Kolkata Knight Riders. And the toss winner was RCB, and the RCB chose to field on that particular game. And winner was Kolkata Knight Riders, and the result was runs. So they won by runs. And then, yeah, there's a result margin. They also have eliminated. So they eliminate whether this game belongs to the eliminator match or not. Okay, and we also have some column that's called as method, and we can clearly see there are some missing values that are present over here. Along with that, we also have information about umpires who were present in that particular match. Okay, so this is how my data looks like. Now, once I have loaded my data as a data frame and displayed first few entries, so when I call this df.head function, this is going to display first 5 entries of my data frame. So after this, I want to understand about the data types of my individual columns. To display the same, here we have written as df.info. So when I execute this cell, so this is going to tell me as what is the data type of my individual column. So the ID column has the integers, city column is object, that is strings, date column is identified as object, player of the match is identified as object, venue is object, and we also have some information where I could see that most of them are object and some of them are strings, some of them are numerical values. Now why this is important, because if you look into this closely, the date column that I'm having, so it has been identified as a strings. But in reality, date should be identified as date time type. The reason, because if this data that I have, if it is present in the data type of dates, in such scenarios, I can have better control of the data. When I say better control, I can check as I can take a difference between two dates. So let's say if I have date 1 and if I have date 2, if it is in daytime format, I can take the difference and I can get to know the number of days between date 1 and day 2. But if it is in the format of strings, in such scenarios, I'll not be able to perform this date type operation. So if I want to do any date type operation, I'll have to make sure that this date column should be converted to my date time. In order to do that, we have various options. So I can make use as pd.to_datetime, and I can specify the format and I can convert it as per my requirement. Now another thing that I want to share over here is, let's look at the result. So if I look into the result, okay, result is strings itself. I think most of them are looking correctly right now. So the neutral venue, it's integer, then that I think most of the data is looking good. But only one column for which I see the issue is for the column of method. See, for the column of method, I can see that there are only 19 entries are present in this column of method. That means out of 816, only 19 entries are present. So close to 800 entries are missing in this data, on this entire data set. So the best way to deal this kind of null entries is I can just drop it. Reason that I want to drop this column, because it doesn't make sense, because most of the entries that I have is in like is null, or I don't have the information. It's better if I drop it itself. So if I want to drop a particular column in Python, we have a method that's called as df.drop. So in my data frame, a method that is called as drop, and I'm mentioning it as, okay, df.drop. Inside the parenthesis, I'm specifying my column name. My column name is method that I want to remove. And to mention this is as a column, I have specified my access as 1. Now, once I execute this, this is going to remove the column of method from my data set. See, this has removed the column of method from my data set. Now, once I have executed this cell, if I display df.head again, see, I can still see my method, column of method present in my data set. The reason, because if I simply call df.drop, it's not going to drop my entire column. I mean, it's not going to save it in place. So whenever I want to save it in place after I perform the drop, we use the parameter in place is equal to true. So df.drop method access is equal to 1 and in place is equal to true. Now by doing like this, I'll be saving the data in place. Now once I give this parameter of in place is equal to true and display my first few entries of my data frame, let's see whether the column has been removed. See, the column has been removed. Now, while dropping the column, there is another way to specify how to drop. So in order to show the same, for the demonstration purpose, I'm going to remove the column of match ID. Okay, I'll just show you by removing the column of this match ID. So I'll use the same command df.drop. Now this time, instead of mentioning it as labels, I'll say it as columns. I'll mention columns is equal to, I'll specify my column name, which is ID, like this. And if I just execute this, see, this has removed my columns. Now I'll give you one more example. I'm just going to comment this. So since we do not want to remove the IDs, so if I want to remove my index label, I can say it as df.drop, and inside the parenthesis I can specify my index and I can mention my index label. So let's assume if I want to remove the index label is equal to 0, so whatever the values that you're seeing, so these are my index labels. So if I want to remove the index is equal to 0, I can say index is equal to 0 and I can just execute this. See, the index 0 has been removed from my data frame. So you have just seen how to remove a particular row or a column. You have actually seen two methods. One way is like calling df.drop, specifying the label that I want to remove and mentioning whether I should remove along rows along the columns. And the another way is directly specifying whether it is a row or an index. So if I'm specifying row or a column, in such scenarios, I don't have to specify my access. So that's the advantage of explicitly saying whether it's an index or whether it's a column. Now in our example, we have taken care of our data by removing the column of method. Now next we are going to see value counts. So this value counts will be applied on my panda series. So I'll just execute this cell. Okay, so on my panda series, I've just used this method that's called as value counts. Now as a result of applying this method, so I have the output that says as how many like for each of the categorical data that we have, so how many number of rows that we have. So here it says as I'm checking for the DF winner. So DF winner, the column winner contains as who won in that match. So if two teams were playing, so who actually won in that match, so that data is present in this column. So that data is present over there. Now it says out of my total data set, 120 matches Mumbai Indians has won. This is followed by CSK. They have won 106 matches. And this is followed by KKR, 99 matches. And this is followed by RCB, 91 matches. So this actually shows us, okay, so how the winning is present. Okay, so DF winner value counts is going to give me the information as how many number of overall information about the winnings that we have on this given game. Now, what we are going to do is we'll use this data that we have and we'll create a pie chart. Now, to create a pie chart, since uh, this is a panda series. Now, on this panda series, if I say value underscore counts and I'm assigning it to a new variable, so whatever the returning panda series, I'm assigning to my new variable and I'm calling it as counts. And on this counts, I'm calling this keys method. So if I call this keys method, it's going to give me the unique values that we have on this panda series. Now I'm going to create a pie chart. Now to create a pie chart, I'll say it as bar dot axis. Okay, it's figure comma axis. I'm specifying how my figure size. I'm specifying my figure size to be 20 to comma 12, and I'm specifying my axis. And on my axis, I'm saying it as plt.py. That is the function that we are going to use. And here, let's do one thing. I'll remove this one and then I'll add at a later point. I'm saying it as for counts, use the counts. Okay, so use the panda series for counts, the variable that we have just created. For X, use the counts panda series, and for the labels, use the keys. Keys are nothing but the index labels that we have. Now, once that is done, I'm adding the title for my plot and I'm just showing that is displaying. So I'll just execute this. So this has created me a pie chart. So it clearly says, so this is how the winning most wins are present. And we can see that Kings 11 Punjab, RCP, KKR and Chennai Super Kings and the Mumbai Indians, they have most number of wins compared to other teams. Now this is just giving me the information as which part would belong to which team. If I want to add further details, so in plt.plot, There is a parameter that is called as auto PCT, and we can specify about as in which format that we want to display the numbers. So this is going to add annotations for my plot. See, this is now displaying the annotation for my plot. Okay, now here I'm going to see which team has actually won more number of wins in the eliminator game. So in order to do that, here I'm running this function that is called as sns.countplot, and this count plot for this inputs I mentioned as x is equal to df winner. So use the data from the column of winner where eliminator is equal to true. Okay, so if I show you how it works, so the way it is going to do is, so if I want to fetch any column, the way that we fetch the column is calling my data frame name and inside the indexing operator. So we mentioned this square brackets as the indexing operator. Inside my indexing operator, we'll specify the column name. Let's assume I'm interested in getting the player of match. So I'll say df and I'll mention my player of match over here inside my square brackets. So this is going to return me that particular column. Okay, it says player of match. Okay, see, this is going to retrieve the values that are present in that specific column. Now here in this scenario, BB McCullum, McHussey, MF Mahroof. So whatever the values that I have over here in this column, so that has been returned for me. Now, when I select a particular column, I can also mention a specific condition. So if I say it as player of match is equal to, and if I want to check whether my player of match is BB McCullum, I'll just copy this and I'll paste it over here. So here I'm checking for a given value, that is player of match for the column, whether it is equal to BB McCullum. So whether the player of match is BB McCullum. So I'll just execute this. So this is going to return me true false. So wherever it is true, it means on that specific match, BB McCullum was player of match. And wherever it is false, that McCullum was not the player of match. So here in this way, I can specify the condition for I can specify the condition for my panda series. Now what we can do is, when I have this Boolean set of conditions, I can pass this Boolean set of conditions on my entire data frame. So when I pass it as an index for my entire data frame, this is going to return me the values wherever it is true. Now for the benefit of visualization, I'll say it as Boolean underscore index, and I'm going to assign these values. And if I display my Boolean underscore index, this is how my Boolean index would look like, which is the collection of true and false. Now I'll mention my data frame, that is df, and I'll mention my Boolean index inside my indexing operator. So which essentially means I'm just sending true and false as an input for this data frame. Now once I execute this, so this has returned me the data frame where the player of match is BB McCullum. See, now the way that this has been returned only these values, because if you have checked over here, so wherever it is true, so for the 0th index we were able to see correctly. So for the 0th index we were able to see that there is a true value. And in the same way, on the index of 187, there was a true value. 192, there was a true value. 461, there's a true value. 482, there was a true value. And because the match was present, so only those values has been returned. So if you look into my resulting data frame, it only contains the entries which are matching. In order to do that match, so I have mentioned as df player of the match is equal to BB McCullum. Now in the same way, here I have mentioned my data as where winner. Okay, so for the winner data, I'm specifying the condition where eliminator is y. Now let's do one thing. I'll copy the same code. Now instead of specifying on the winner, first I'll just run it on my data frame. Now this should be more clear to you. I'll mention as data frame, and inside my indexing operator, I've mentioned as df, where eliminator, the column eliminator, if you see there is a column that's called as eliminator, I'm saying it as if it is equal to y. Now to check if it is equal to y, I'm making use of equality operator. I'm checking whether the eliminator column is equal to y. Obviously this is going to return me either true or false value. Now let me just show you over here. If I say df eliminator is equal to y, this is going to return me either true or false, and I'm sending this true or false directly inside my indexing operator for df. I'll just execute this. See, this is going to return me the data frame where the eliminator is true, so or the eliminator is y. So all the rows in my data frame belongs to the column which is equal to eliminator is equal to y. Now here in the below cell, I have mentioned as df winner. That means instead of applying this filter on my entire data frame, I'm selecting a single column. So the single column, let's do one thing. I'll call head to display first few entries. Okay, and along with this, I'll copy this code and I'll call head on top of it so that you can understand what is going on. So here, when I display first 5 entries, so this is how the first 5 entries of this subset of my data set looks like, where eliminator is equal to true. And on this data set, I'm extracting only my winner team. So who won? So if you look into the first 5 entries of my data frame as who won, so the first match was won by Rajasthan Royals, second one was Kings 11 Punjab, third one is Sunrisers Hyderabad, and RCB and RR, that is Rajasthan Royals. So these are the winners of my first 5 entries of my data frame. And if you look into my Panda series, only those information that I have. So I just have the who won in my given data. So RR, Kings 11 Punjab, Sunrisers Hyderabad, RCB, and Rajasthan Royals. So I'm sending this data. Okay, so I'm not sending head, but I'm just sending this filter data as my X, and I'm also specifying my data, that is my entire data as my data frame, and I'm saying it as okay, who won, like which team has actually won most matches in the eliminator. Now obviously this has created me a visualization, but I'm unable to visualize it. So the reason because the x-axis ticks that I have over here, so we actually call it as ticks. So the x-axis ticks that we have, so this x-axis ticks is not easily viewable for me. So what I'll do, I'm going to rotate this x-axis ticks. So I'll say plt.x ticks, and I'll specify as, let's rotate it by 90 degree. Okay, I'll just execute this. So this time I can visualize it in a better manner. So Rajasthan Royal, Kings 11 Punjab, Sunrisers Hyderabad, RCB, Mumbai Indians, Delhi Capitals, and KKR. So from this given plot, I can say that the Kings 11 Punjab has actually won most number of matches in the eliminator compared to other matches that we have. So this analysis was obviously, it's not a straightforward, isn't it? I cannot directly look into the CSV file that I have and say, okay, this is how the data is present. I cannot just directly look into my CSV file and say it, but we were able to come to this conclusion by looking into this visualization. So that's the power of visualization. Now here, I'm just creating the visualization of toss decision. So who actually won the toss? And here the column of toss winner tells me as who actually won the toss for a given match. So if I say df toss winner unique, so it says these are the various teams who have won the match. Now I'm going to use this information and I'm going to say it as, okay, for this given data set, who has actually won the match and whether did they choose to bat or whether did they choose to ball first. In order to do that, here I have created a variable that's called as teams and df toss winner dot unique. So this is going to have these values where my teams variable will have these values. Now I'm saying it as decision making. This is the pandas data frame that I'm creating. On this pandas data frame, I'm specifying my columns as toss winner, what is the decision, and how many times did he choose that decision. So these are the three columns that I'm adding, and I'm going to enumerate on my teams. So enumerate is nothing but these. Okay, I'm enumerating, I'm saying it as, okay, so whether my toss winner is the column T, let's assume RCB, and whether did he choose to won the match. So if yes, then I'm going to save it as temp bat, and I'm going to choose in a similar fashion whether he won the toss and whether he choose to field. And on that basis, I'll have two subset of data, temp bat and temp field, and I'm going to append these things for my data frame. So while appending, I'll say it as toss winner as T. How many times? I'll mention as temp bat toss winner dot count. So this is going to give me the count, and I'm going to ignore my index, and I'm specifying my decision as bat. In the same way, I'm appending the data for fielding as well. I'll just execute this, and when I display my decision making data frame, this is what my decision making data frame says. It says RCB has won the toss 24 times and they chose to bat in 24 matches. So which means for 24 matches they have actually won the toss and choose to bat, and 63 times they have actually won the toss and chose to field. And coming to CSK, so I think CSK, by looking into this data, I can clearly see that CSK prefers to bat first. So they have actually won, like out of the total number of toss that they have won, they have actually chosen to bat first. So 51 times they have chosen to bat, and 34 times they have chosen to ball. So in this way, we can do the analysis, and once we have the analysis, we can further create the plot. Now with this updated code, I'm going to commit to my GitHub repository. So you can observe the same from my GitHub repository. So this has been complete. Let's refresh this page. Okay, so I can further create the visualization as well. Here I'm creating a cat plot with the help of Seaborn's cat plot. When I generally call this csns.cat plot, this is going to create me a scatter plot. Let's do one thing. So I have mentioned as sns.cat plot, and I've mentioned my x-axis as a toss winner. So who have actually won the match, and uh, for hue I have mentioned my decision. For y, so it actually displays as how many times that I have won. So even though it looks better, but I'm not getting the complete information of this data. So I'll be able to better get the analysis of this data if I'm creating the bar chart. So I'll copy paste over here. So my x-axis is my toss winner. Y will be the number of times that I have won. For color coding, I am using the column of decision. Okay. Now for the type, I'll say something like this. I'll say kind is equal to, I want my bar chart. Okay. And I'll mention my height is equal to 5, and I'll specify my aspect is equal to 2. Okay, and I'll keep my x-axis as rotation 90 degrees, and I'm going to add some x label. My x label, I'll say it as IPL teams, and for y label, I'll mention it as toss decision. I can also add title as well, plt.title. So I'll say it as IPL toss analysis. So there should be comma. So this is what my plot is telling me. So with this bar chart, I'm getting more information out of this data. So I can say Kolkata Knight Riders, they actually choose to field. And if you look at it, but at least by observing the trend in this data, I can say that CSK is the only team who prefers to bat first. Rest other teams who actually prefer to ball first. And yeah, even DC, that is Deccan Chargers and Pune Warriors, they have chosen to bat first. So CSK, Deccan Chargers, and the Pune Warriors are choosing to bat first, and rest others are preferring to choose fielding as a first if they win the toss. So that is what we could observe in this given plot. So I'll update these code changes to my GitHub repo as well. So I'll say updated changes. So I'll refresh it. Yes, so we have the toss analysis as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.